My husband of 4 years cheated on me with my sister. When I told her his truth, she left the house in tears. Recently, something happened with my husband, Ken, that has left me feeling hurt, embarrassed, and confused. It's been weighing heavily on my mind, and I haven't talked to anyone about it yet. For context, Ken is 7 years older than me. We met when I was 21 and I was at a low point in my life after an abusive relationship. Ken seemed different, kind, attentive, and clear about wanting a serious relationship. Over time, I fell in love with him. He had no parents, having lost them in a car accident, and craved having a family of his own. When we got serious, I introduced him to my family, who adored him, including my sister Jamie. Jamie, who was single at the time, often joined us on outings. Eventually, she started dating Fred, and we hung out as couples. While Fred and Ken got along fine, Ken occasionally criticized Fred, calling him a lunatic for his belief in crystals and astrology. Things came to a head when Ken mocked Fred for asking Jamie to pay for dinner. I confronted Ken, telling him to stay out of my sister's business. Ken proposed, and despite some nerves, I said yes. We had a grand wedding, and Ken made it perfect. My family and friends were envious of how lucky I was to have found him. Our honeymoon in Hawaii was wonderful, and everything seemed perfect. The trouble began after we returned. One day, while Ken was at work and I was working from home, a pregnant woman knocked on our door looking for Ken. She revealed that she had slept with Ken 4 months ago and was now pregnant. My heart sank. I called Ken, and he came home immediately. When he saw her, his face drained of color, confirming my worst fears. Ken admitted to a one-night stand, saying he was stressed out with wedding planning. The woman confirmed their story and said she wanted to inform Ken about the pregnancy before making any decisions. She didn't want the babies or child support and agreed to a paternity test. In the following days, Ken pleaded with me not to leave him, offering countless justifications. I felt like I was in a fog, staying curled up in bed, unsure of what to do. My heart was shattered, and I didn't know if I could ever trust him again. Ken's pleading continued in the days that followed, each justification only adding to my confusion and pain. He insisted the woman meant nothing to him, blaming stress and poor judgment during our wedding planning. He promised it would never happen again, begging for forgiveness and a chance to make things right. I felt like I was walking through a haze, unable to escape the overwhelming betrayal and uncertainty about our future. The woman's revelation had shattered the trust and love I thought we had built over the years. Every moment felt heavy with the weight of his mistake, and I struggled to find clarity amidst the emotional turmoil. Despite his pleas and apologies, I couldn't shake the feeling of being deceived and hurt beyond measure. The life I had envisioned with Ken seemed like a distant dream, overshadowed by the harsh reality of his infidelity. As I grappled with my emotions, I wondered if our relationship could ever recover from such a profound breach of trust. I wanted to leave him, but I feared slipping into depression. Everything felt different and broken. I remember how devastated Ken looked when the woman said she would give the babies up for adoption. They got a paternity test, which confirmed Ken was the father. My hope that she was wrong shattered. Ken told me he always wanted to be a father and suggested adopting the babies. Furious, I yelled at him, calling him crazy. He tried to pacify me, saying it was an opportunity to have children without me getting pregnant. He shared his traumatic orphanage experience, hoping I'd reconsider. I worried about telling my parents about his cheating and raising his affair kids. Ken assured me the woman meant nothing to him, and we could say the children were adopted. I laughed, pointing out they might look like him, but he insisted we'd handle it. He promised to care for us and be a happy family. Despite my anger, I started considering his idea. The woman seemed nice and honest, and I felt sad about the twins entering the system. I didn't want to hurt my parents by revealing Ken's affair. I couldn't forgive him entirely, but I agreed to adopt the twins legally. Ken was overjoyed and promised to handle the paperwork. The adoption process was long and strenuous. We didn't tell anyone, not even my parents or Jamie. The woman was helpful and had no issues signing the papers. When she went into labor, we were stressed, but everything went fine. Holding the twins for the first time, I felt our hardships were worth it. We brought the babies home, and I found new purpose in life. Telling my family was tough, My parents were shocked but supportive, and the rest of the family understood. Trevor and Jack are adorable boys with red hair like their mother, so no one suspects they are Ken's children. Ken is a doting father, and the boys love me more. 4 years later, much had changed. We moved to a bigger place, and I got promoted. Ken and I went for counseling, and he was patient and loyal. Jamie, my sister, married her boyfriend Fred 2 years ago, but Fred left her 3 months ago. Jamie moved in with us, and Ken was very sweet to her. I started noticing their closeness, which made me uneasy. One night, I found a text on Ken's phone from an unknown number saying, "I miss you." Ken assured me it was a mistake, and I believed him. Yesterday, I came home and heard moaning from upstairs. I found Jamie and Ken in bed together. Shocked, I fell to the ground. Ken looked terrified, while Jamie was nonchalant. My sister, my best friend, had betrayed me. Pain and anger surged through me, and my world crumbled around me. How could they do this to me? How long had this been going on behind my back? I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I was paralyzed by shock and betrayal. Before I could process what was happening, Jamie spoke, her voice dripping with arrogance. "Looks like you caught us, sis," she said, mocking me. "Guess you're not as smart as you thought." I started screaming at her, telling her how dare she come into my house and sleep with my husband with my kids downstairs. Jamie, unfazed, replied that she had done no wrong since she and Ken were in love. Ken shook his head, denying it, but Jamie continued, saying I wasn't a good wife and didn't appreciate him. So she took matters into her own hands. She admitted to sleeping with him twice when I was out with the boys, and today she seized the opportunity since I came home earlier than expected. Ken tried to approach me, guilt and regret on his face, but I couldn't bear to look at him. The man I had worked so hard to trust again had betrayed me in the worst way. I was more furious with my sister and her justifications. I screamed at her to leave immediately, or I'd call the police. Jamie yelled back that it should be me who leaves since this was Ken's house. She said I had no right to tell her anything and that I needed to move out with my kids. Ken tried to protest, but I stopped him. I told Jamie the kids stay, revealing they were Ken's from an affair years back. I watched the shock on her face as she demanded explanations from Ken. He confirmed the truth and clarified he didn't love her and made a mistake giving in to her. Jamie broke down and Ken asked her to leave, knowing her presence distressed me. She left in tears. I took my boys to their room, not wanting them to sense anything wrong. Ken later came in, asking to talk. My mind was made up. I told him in the living room, away from the boys, that I was done. I asked him to pack and leave. He pleaded and cried, but I stood my ground. In the end, he left with a suitcase, telling the boys he was going on an urgent work trip. This happened yesterday, and today I feel broken. I feel bad for the twins, who probably have no idea their parents are splitting up. I grew up with parents who loved each other and don't want to subject my kids to the ugliness of divorce. Yet I know leaving Ken is the right decision. Would I be an a-hole to my kids for divorcing their dad? Update 1. Thank you, everyone, for your kind words. Since my post last week, I'm assured I'm heading down the right path. The twins ask about their dad, but get easily distracted. Ken texted me saying he's in a motel and blamed Jamie for seducing him. I left him on red. Jamie hasn't contacted me, and I don't care. Update 2. I talked to my parents. Jamie wouldn't have the courage to tell them. When I turned up unannounced, they were surprised but happy to see me and the boys. I told them everything. They were shocked but supportive. I also revealed the twins were Ken's biological kids. My parents were stunned but assured me they have my back. My dad offered to help me find the best lawyer for custody. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update. I'm separated from my husband, and we're going through divorce proceedings. We talked to the twins about the divorce. They were sad but excited about double celebrations. Ken has apologized repeatedly, but I take his words at face value. I want to be polite and civil for the kids' sake. My parents found out Jamie had been couch surfing, too ashamed to reach out. When she had no place to go, she reached out to our parents. My dad refused to let her in, saying she was no longer his daughter. My mom supported him. Jamie begged but eventually left. I have blocked her, and if she ever comes to my property, I will call the police.